Picture this, a field of mud, of shattered dreams and fading light. The invincible, faltering at last, beneath a burdened sky. And there, the emperor's gaze, holding a moment of impossible truth. His grand design, once so vivid, now collapsing before his eyes. This wasn't just a battle, it was the world holding its breath, the silence now heavier than any cannon's roar. A name now etched into the very soul of history, forever whispered with a tremor: Waterloo. A final, decisive blow. How could a mind so brilliant, a will so iron, finally meet its crushing, utter end? This is the profound question. He was a legend, a force of nature who rewrote maps, an empire forged by sheer, audacious, unyielding will. For years, Europe trembled at his name, his shadow stretching from the scorching sands to frozen distant lands. But on one particular morning, June 18th, 1815, destiny itself turned its gaze upon a small, muddy field. The stakes were not just land or crowns, they were the very soul of a continent. A world held its breath. This day was not just another date. It was the moment an empire would face its ultimate, unforgiving execution. And in that quiet field, beneath a brooding sky, stories of courage, folly, and profound sacrifice would unfold. The air itself seemed heavy, pregnant with the promise of utter devastation. A storm unlike any other was brewing. Every life, every choice, every single breath mattered, from the emperor to the youngest, bravest foot soldier. Waterloo was the stage where an entire era, a colossal ambition, was brought to its knees, forever changing everything. We'll journey deep into the mind of a genius to understand the strategic drama, the fateful decisions made. We'll feel the weight of command, the agonizing choices faced by men tasked with shaping a continent's fate. Beyond the history books, we'll immerse ourselves in the ebb and flow, the relentless pulse of that fateful day. The fear, the hope, the sheer will to survive. These human elements breathe life into every single poignant moment. Join us as we embark on an epic, cinematic journey into the heart of Waterloo's profound and lasting mystery. We'll explore the strategic brilliance and the fatal flaws, the intricate tapestry woven by fate and human error. This is more than just a battle. It is a profound human drama filled with courage, sacrifice, and the rawest emotion. Come, let us walk together through the echoes of that day and truly feel the history that shaped our world. On a small island, far from his grand stage, a Titan's spirit stirred once more. He dreamed. The world believed him caged, his destiny sealed. But an emperor's will is a stubborn, wild thing. Whispers of return, like the tide, grew strong. Europe held its breath, unknowingly. That fateful February night, a shadow slipped away from Elba's quiet shores. Hope ignited. A small fleet, yet carrying the weight of a continent's fate, sailed silently towards destiny. The landing in France met not with resistance, but a surge of forgotten, fervent loyalty. His presence, a flame reigniting embers of devotion in the hearts of his old soldiers. Each mile, his army swelled. A tide of devotion carried him towards the heart of France. Paris itself opened its arms, welcoming back the prodigal son, almost as if in a dream. He walked back into the Tuileries, claiming his throne, a breathtaking act of sheer audacity. Thus began the 100 Days, a brief, fiery flicker of an empire reawakened against all odds. But across Europe, a shiver of dread ran through royal courts, a familiar, unwelcome fear. The shadow of Napoleon, once thought banished, loomed large again, threatening their fragile peace. They had tasted peace, however brief, and were unwilling to relinquish it to his boundless ambition. So, the great powers of Europe moved swiftly, forging a new coalition, a formidable, united front. The Seventh Coalition was born, a colossal assembly determined to finally end this relentless saga. Armies began to stir, across borders, preparing for another devastating, inevitable conflict. Napoleon knew his time was short. He faced a monumental challenge, a truly desperate gamble. To his north, two giants awaited: Wellington, steady as a rock; Blücher, a tempest unleashed. Their combined strength would be overwhelming, a force no single army could hope to withstand. His genius, his ambition, dictated one perilous, audacious move: strike before they united. He had to move swiftly, with the precision of a surgeon, separating the two formidable adversaries. Each passing moment brought Wellington and Blücher closer to their fateful strategic rendezvous. This was his chance, his only chance, to reclaim what he believed was his rightful empire. Near a small Belgian village named Waterloo, destiny was quietly, grimly, preparing its stage. He carried the weight of a continent's fate and his own upon weary but determined shoulders. The continent was weary of war, but one man's dream kept the drums of battle beating. A desperate gamble indeed, played out against the backdrop of a world craving lasting peace. The stage was set, the players in motion, for a battle that would echo through history. His ambition, his genius, against the weary will of an entire, united continent. What a story. Napoleon's shadow, so recently thought vanquished, stretched once more across a weary, hopeful Europe. It lingered. The news of his escape, his return to power, sent shivers through every royal court. Fear returned. Yet, in this moment of dread, a resolve solidified. The continent would not fall again, not easily. Thus, the Seventh Coalition was born, an alliance forged not in ambition, but in quiet, firm desperation. Different banners, different tongues, but one shared, profound purpose: to halt the Emperor's march. Two men, however, would carry the heaviest burden, their destinies irrevocably intertwined with Europe's fate. First, Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington. The Iron Duke, they called him, and for good reason. His mind, a fortress of logic and cold, hard numbers, plotted defenses with almost surgical precision. A veteran of countless campaigns, from India's sun-baked plains to the harsh Iberian Peninsula. He understood the brutal calculus of war, the grim necessity of every sacrifice, every painful loss. Wellington rarely spoke of grand visions. His philosophy was simply to hold, to endure, to survive. He built his strategy on patience, positioning, and an almost defiant refusal to be outmaneuvered. Then there was Gebhard Lebrecht von Blücher, the Prussian field marshal, a man forged in fire. His spirit, restless and fiery, echoed the very soul of a nation yearning for vengeance, not just peace. Blücher was a charging bull, a master of aggressive, relentless pursuit, often inspiring his men. While Wellington sought the perfect defensive ground, Blücher sought the enemy, eager for the fray. He connected with his soldiers, a paternal, often gruff figure who never shied from a direct fight. His motto, Vorwärts, forward, was not just a command, but a deeply ingrained philosophy. Wellington's army was a mosaic, a challenging mix of British veterans and less experienced allies. This was no single unified host, but a tapestry of nations, each with its own loyalties, its own hopes. The challenge was immense, molding these disparate parts into a cohesive, unyielding fighting force. A true test. Their motivation varied, but a shared understanding of Napoleon's threat slowly began to bind them. They were the shield, fragile perhaps, but absolutely determined to stand firm, come what may. The Prussian army, rebuilt after their earlier defeats, burned with a fierce, unwavering desire for retribution. They remembered Jena and Auerstedt, the humiliation, the occupation. This was deeply personal for them. Under Blücher's fiery leadership, their wounds had healed, replaced by a hardened, disciplined resolve. The stage was set in the rolling, unassuming fields of Belgium, a land soon to become legendary. Their initial positions were tenuous, a wide separation demanding intricate, precise coordination between them. The pressure was immense, a heavy cloak weighing upon these two commanders, each with his unique spirit. They would either stand together or fall apart, deciding Europe's destiny. A profound, lasting burden. The world held its breath, awaiting Napoleon's next move. Dawn broke, deceptively calm, on June 15th. Then, like a whispered secret, turning to thunder, French columns streamed across the border. Napoleon, ever the audacious gambler, thrust his armies forward, a lightning strike at his enemies. He aimed to divide, to conquer swiftly. The Sambre River was crossed with incredible speed. For many, news of his arrival was a shock, a sudden disruption to their quiet lives. Neither Wellington nor Blücher initially grasped the full audacity of Napoleon's swift plan. The stage was being set for battles that would define an era, alter destinies forever. Small clashes broke out, the first tremors of the great earthquake about to engulf Belgium. At Ligny, on June 16th, Blücher's Prussians stood firm, grimly awaiting their adversary. Napoleon's gaze swept the horizon. He sought to cripple Blücher, to shatter the Prussian spirit. The roar of French artillery shattered the morning. Iron rained down, a terrible symphony of war. Then came the infantry, waves of determined blue, pushing relentlessly into the Prussian resolve. Ligny village became a brutal, desperate cauldron of fighting. Every house, every street, bled. The Prussians fought with a tenacity born of fierce loyalty, holding ground against every desperate assault. Old Blücher, a lion in winter, raged amongst his men, refusing to yield an inch. Cavalry charges, like crashing waves, broke upon Prussian squares, testing their iron discipline. The soil drank deep that day. Each life lost, a personal tragedy in the grand tapestry. Napoleon unleashed his guard, the legendary old grumblers, for the battle's decisive, final blow. Their charge was irresistible, shattering the tired, battered Prussian formations, forcing a retreat. Yet, it was not a rout. The Prussians, though beaten, withdrew in disciplined, defiant order. Gneisenau, their chief of staff, held them together, guiding them into the gathering night. A tactical victory, yes, but the decisive, crushing blow Napoleon desired, it had eluded him. The cost was immense, a somber toll paid in human lives, etched into the landscape. At Quatre Bras, miles away, another drama unfolded simultaneously. A vital, desperate struggle. Nay, Napoleon's bravest of the brave was tasked with pinning Wellington, preventing his retreat. Wellington's forces arrived in fragments, scrambling to defend this crucial crossroads against mounting pressure. French cavalry charges, magnificent and terrible, crashed against steadfast British infantry squares. The British, disciplined and unyielding, held their ground, refusing to break under the relentless pressure. It was a desperate, bloody dance, back and forth, each side desperate for control of the crossroads. Ney's hesitation, a moment of indecision, perhaps cost Napoleon the chance for decisive victory. Wellington, ever the pragmatist, saw the crucial nature of holding Quatre Bras. He stood firm. By nightfall, it was a bloody stalemate. Wellington had held, buying precious time for what was next. The French, though fighting bravely, could not dislodge him. The crossroads remained defiant. Ligny's field lay scarred, a testament to the day's brutal engagement. But the Prussians were gone. They marched, not in panic, but with grim resolve, towards Wavre, unseen by their pursuers. Napoleon, confident in his Ligny victory, underestimated the spirit and resilience of his old foes. Wellington, hearing of Ligny, skillfully withdrew his forces, maintaining cohesion, ever vigilant. The strategic dance continued, moving towards a place called Waterloo, a field of destiny. Then, the heavens wept. A torrential downpour began, washing over fields and souls. Roads turned to rivers of mud, sucking at boots, bogging down vital cannon and supplies. Nature herself seemed to intervene, slowing Napoleon's pursuit, altering the very fabric of war. Every hour lost in the deluge was an hour gained by Wellington, solidifying his defenses. Wellington chose his ground well, the ridge at Waterloo, preparing for the ultimate, terrible confrontation. The muddy field awaited, a silent canvas for the battle that would, soon enough, shatter an empire. That June morning, the world still slept, unaware of the storm gathering, of history's cruel hand. Then, a distant rumble, like thunder far off, whispered promises of the day's terrible beginning. Beneath a watchful sky, the cannons of France prepared their fiery, deafening, world-shattering pronouncements. A single spark, a terrifying roar, and the battle's cruel overture began, shaking the very ground. Iron rain poured down, unseen death whistling, tearing at the morning's quiet, forever altering young lives. Men tightened their grip, swallowed their fear. The true horror of that day had truly, irrevocably begun. Nestled amidst the fields, Hougoumont stood, a venerable old farm, soon to be a crucible of fire. It was just a farm, yet its walls would decide so much. Brave men prepared to hold their ground. The emperor's legions pressed forward, an unstoppable tide against the chateau's ancient, defiant stones. Every window, every crack, became a deadly eye. The defenders watched, their breath held, hearts pounding. The gate buckled, a desperate struggle for inches. Hope and despair clashed in that brutal, confined space. Inside those walls, The world shrunk to survival. A desperate, primal fight, man against man, life for death. Through the din, a voice of courage, a flicker of hope. Leadership truly shone in humanity's darkest hours. A relentless assault, a desperate defense. That gate became a symbol, a line in the blood-soaked sand. Flames licked at the ancient timbers, a fiery maw consuming all. Hougoumont burned, yet still defied. Amidst the smoke and fire, men fought on, mere shadows caught in hell's inferno. They fought for time. Every bullet, every bayonet thrust, spoke of courage, of a desperate, unwavering refusal to yield. The ground drank deeply, a silent, terrible witness to the lives extinguished, the dreams that would never be. Walls crumbled, but spirits did not. For hours, Hougoumont bled, but its heart, somehow, kept beating. It was more than stone and mortar. It was a defiant spirit, consuming precious French time and lives. Napoleon's bravest of the brave, Ney, simmered. He watched Hougoumont burn, yearning for decisive action. His gaze swept past the inferno, seeking a new target, a chink in the seemingly unyielding Allied armor. Just beyond the right flank, La Haye-Sainte, another farm, now became a vital, desperate objective. The Emperor's wrath sought another outlet, another key to unlock the stubbornly held Allied positions. Here, men of the King's German Legion fought, desperately defending this unassuming farm. Their very lives. Like Hougoumont, this farm became a maw, swallowing lives, a desperate, bloody struggle for vital ground. Every shot counted, every defense a miracle. Ammunition dwindled, but their resolve remained unbroken. Inch by agonizing inch, the French clawed their way closer, yet resistance held, fiercely, desperately. The very air crackled with death, a choking, blinding fog of war, testing every man's last breath. This farmhouse, insignificant yet vital, held the very heart of Wellington's line in fragile balance. Watching the struggle, Ney's blood boiled. He saw a chance, a path to glory, a desperate, bold stroke. Then came the thunder, the glorious, terrifying sight of France's heavy cavalry, an awe-inspiring, deadly force. Pride, courage, and a dash of madness. These men rode to break the unyielding, resolute British line. Like a river of steel, they began to move. A magnificent, terrifying spectacle, heading directly into history. The earth trembled, but the British squares, like ancient rocks, stood firm, waiting for the storm. A deafening roar as metal met flesh. The squares held, impossibly, against the thunderous, desperate charge. Around them they rode, a frustrated, furious tide. Yet, the squares remained, an unbreakable, defiant will. But where was the support? The cannons, meant for the squares, now sometimes struck their own men. One by one, they fought. A testament to human endurance, standing firm against overwhelming, relentless force. The ground was littered with a terrible harvest of steel and flesh, a monument to Ney's valiant, desperate gamble. Again and again, they charged. Again and again, the squares held. A dance of death, born of sheer will. Through sheer grit, they stood. A desperate, heroic stand, etched forever into the fabric of human memory. The battlefield, a cauldron of fire, consumed all. Hougoumont, La Haye-Sainte, and the cavalry charges. As dusk approached, the ferocity only escalated. The battle still raged, its brutal end yet to unfold. An uneasy silence fell across the muddy fields, hinting at a new, unseen threat approaching slowly. But the earth itself seemed to rumble, a faint tremor growing, carrying whispers of something monumental. From the east, a shadow began to stir, a creeping presence that carried the weight of fate. It was still just a flicker, a suspicion in the fading light, but dread had begun its work. Then, through the haze, shadows materialized, disciplined columns of blue. A chilling sight indeed. They were few at first, but like a rising tide, more appeared, an endless stream of steel. The dreaded news reached Napoleon. Blücher, against all odds, was here, a relentless, avenging force. The Emperor's face revealed little, but his heart must have known the game was changing. The first shots rang out, distant but clear, a new, terrible symphony of war beginning there. A cold dread crept through the French ranks, for those weren't friends on the horizon. Blücher's men, relentless and avenging, were finally there, tearing at Napoleon's vulnerable flank. The scales of fate, once precariously balanced, now tipped decisively, irreversibly, against the emperor. Every moment brought more Prussian bayonets, more resolute faces, more deafening cannon fire. The once mighty French army was now stretched thin, fighting on two fronts, weary and outnumbered. The sun dipped lower, casting long, cruel shadows, but the battle's ferocity only intensified. Hope, a fragile butterfly, began to flutter away, leaving only the grim reality of exhaustion. With the evening light fading, Napoleon knew this was his last, desperate, audacious throw of the dice. One last gamble, one final defiant roar against the encroaching darkness before all was lost. His beloved Guard, the very heart of his empire, prepared for their final, impossible, glorious task. These were men forged in fire, loyal to a fault, ready to follow their emperor to the end. Their eagles, symbols of past glories, now fluttered over their last, most desperate charge. He asked of them the impossible, to break Wellington's line, to turn the tide one last time. The finest soldiers of an age, a legend in human form, took their positions solemnly. Step by solemn step, they marched into the growing dusk, a living legend moving toward destiny. Their courage was a tangible thing, almost visible, pushing back the fear that gripped other men. Wellington's men waited, stoic as statues, knowing the legend that now advanced upon them. For a moment, it seemed their invincible aura might prevail, bending the sturdy British lines. They pressed hard, their might palpable, driving the redcoats back a few precious, bloody yards. But the British lines, though shaken, did not break. Their discipline held them fast. They held their ground, shoulder to shoulder, ready to unleash their own devastating, coordinated fire. The strain was immense. Even the Imperial Guard were but flesh and blood, after all. Then came the order, sharp and clear. Now, gentlemen, the command rippled across the field. Then, a storm of lead, a wall of fire erupted, tearing through the elite ranks mercilessly. The finest soldiers stumbled, their disciplined ranks shattering as if struck by lightning. The impossible began to unfold, a sight that had never been witnessed before. They faltered, then recoiled. The legendary Guard, the Emperor's invincibles, finally broken. A gasp spread across the battlefield, a collective realization of what was happening. His final throw had failed. His beloved Guard, his very legend, was now retreating. Then, the words, shattering the air, piercing every heart. La Garde recule. The impossible cry echoed, shattering an army. And a legend, forevermore. The world changed. The tide truly turned then, rushing in, sweeping away all that Napoleon had built. An empire's ambition, once boundless, now lay broken, scattered across the muddy fields. The man who once dominated Europe was undone, his sun setting in a sea of despair. Waterloo became the grave of an era, a somber monument to a dream that finally died. The Guard, once invincible, now faltered. A whisper of fear became a roar, shattering all discipline. Then, a shudder ran through the ranks. It was an unraveling, a sudden, desperate flight from all hope. The army, once a formidable force, became a river of panicked humanity, flowing away from the battle. Hope, like a fragile lantern, flickered out across that desolate, darkening field, leaving only despair. Friendships forged in fire meant little now. Each man was an island, adrift in a sea of dread. The roar of cannons faded, replaced by the guttural cries of men, a symphony of utter defeat. But the night offered no solace. From the shadows, a new terror emerged, swift and utterly unforgiving. The Prussians, vengeful and fresh, began their chase. There would be no mercy this fading evening. Like wolves sensing weakness, they harried the broken remnants, turning rout into a desperate, merciless hunt. Even the emperor, who commanded so much, could only watch his empire crumble before his very eyes. The strategist, the conqueror, was now just a man, losing control of his destiny and his soul. The whispers became pleas, then urgent commands. "Sire, you must ride. There is nothing left here." His gilded carriage, once a symbol of power, now struggled through the human tide, a fragile vessel. The air itself crackled with danger. A blur of enemy cavalry passed terrifyingly close, a breath away. In the churning mud and utter chaos, the carriage stalled. There was no time to salvage treasures. He left behind his maps, his comforts, his very symbols of state. Only survival mattered now. The battlefield fell silent, save for the moans of the wounded. A landscape utterly devoured by war. Amidst the wreckage, two shadows met. The victors, their grim task completed, stood upon history. Their faces told tales of immense struggle, of lives lost. A world forever changed by this day. A simple handshake, yet it sealed an empire's fate, a continent's future, an emperor's lost reign. The sheer scale of what unfolded here defies words. So much ambition, so much suffering, now lay still. Each broken sword, each silent form, was a life, a story, extinguished on this blood-soaked earth. As night claimed the field, so too did history claim its due. A chapter closed, forever etched in memory. The rain washed over the fields, mirroring the tears of a continent, as an era truly ended that day. The emperor, once a titan, now rode into a darkening twilight, his dreams scattered like dust. Back in France, a profound silence fell, a weight settling upon all who had followed him. The pen moved across the page, writing the final chapter of an extraordinary, yet troubled, life story. Paris felt different now, hushed. A king, an emperor, had fallen from his lofty perch. The grand ambition, the ceaseless march, all concluded, leaving behind only the long, quiet road. He watched his beloved France disappear, a final, poignant farewell to all he had once known. The vast ocean became his keeper, carrying him far from power towards an unknown, distant shore. Then, the island emerged, a lonely sentinel guarding his last, quiet, and remote earthly prison. He walked onto that barren rock, no longer a general, but a prisoner of forgotten battles. Longwood House, a humble dwelling, became the world's stage for his final, solitary, reflective years. The once unconquerable mind now grappled with memory, with what might have been, in quiet despair. The endless sea mirrored his endless thoughts, a vast expanse of unfulfilled desires and faded glory. In those quiet moments, he perhaps remembered faces, loved ones, and the distant echoes of victory. His body, once so strong, now yielded to time and ailment, a mortal man nearing his end. A hush fell over the island, the great general's breath finally stilled. The long struggle over, the world learned of his passing, marking the quiet, definitive end to an unparalleled, tumultuous chapter. Waterloo wasn't just a battle. It was the final, thunderous closing act of 23 long years. From its ashes, a new, fragile hope emerged, a yearning for enduring peace across the weary continent. In Vienna, wise men gathered, seeking to rebuild, to reorder a world so profoundly shaken. Borders shifted, powers realigned. A new European order, a fragile balance, began to form. Waterloo taught us about unchecked ambition, how even the mightiest can falter against united will. It showed the quiet, yet immense, power of many standing together, forging a lasting peace. And so, we arrive at the quiet echoes of a battle that reshaped a continent's very soul. This place, once merely a field, became something far more profound in the minds of generations. Waterloo became a whisper, a stark synonym for absolute, irreversible, and utterly final defeat, etched forever. From its dust and despair, Europe gleaned profound lessons. Lessons whispered across centuries, still relevant today. It spoke of unchecked ambition's perilous climb, of how even genius can blind itself to its own limits. It revealed the formidable, unbreakable power that Allied forces could wield when standing united as one. And it showed the perilously thin line separating true military genius from the fatal flaw of hubris. Waterloo, truly, was the day the grand, burning sun began its slow, inevitable descent toward darkness. On that hallowed ground, the greatest empire builder of his tumultuous age finally met his tragic, ultimate end. His legacy became a perplexing duality, inspiring awe for his tactical brilliance and unwavering, formidable will. Yet, it also remains a solemn, poignant cautionary tale, a stark reminder for all who seek immense power. If these echoes resonate with your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share your own thoughts, your deepest ponderings. Let's delve into history's lessons together, in community. What, in your discerning opinion, was Napoleon's single biggest, most profound mistake that day?